can see, made in Wear Hills today. So I'm Rosalind Gino from Kenya Bankers Association. I'll be taking you through climate smart investment opportunities demand study that we did for the transport sector. So I don't know how many of you who know about the Green Bonds program here in Kenya. Hands? Awesome. So we hope to see some issuance in the transport sector. So for those ones who don't know, KBA is a founding partner for the Green Bonds program. Our partners are FSD Africa, Nairobi Securities Exchange, Climate Bonds Initiative, FMO, that's the Dutch Development Bank, and we also have support from WWF Kenya. So our main goal is to actually catalyze the rise of a green bonds market. So for those who don't know what green bonds are, it's basically a debt instrument whose proceeds goes towards to green projects. So hopefully we'll see some of these green projects, and in terms of the demand, in terms of financing. So I'll just begin by mentioning what we're hoping to do with this particular study. We're hoping to quantify the green investment opportunity in Kenya and identify barriers and propose also solutions to some of these barriers and create bankable projects in the transport sector. So we took different approaches to do this. We did literature review, and also we did some interviews with key informants in the public and also the private sector, just to be able to come up with an idea of how much it costs to finance some of these green projects in the transport sector. So as you well know, Kenya's transport sectors includes rail, road, waterway, both inland and open sea. But all these different forms of transport, they all contribute to a significant amount of emission into the environment. So there's a case in terms of ensuring that we address this issue. So as you well know, import duty collections on transport equipment in 2017 were the second largest of any collection. That's after food, drinks, and tobacco. So you can see there's a lot of demand for transport-related equipment in Kenya. So there is a case for sustainable development in the transport sector. So for road transport, it accounts for approximately 72% of the sector's emission. That's quite significant. Will you agree with me? And for the marine, shipping accounts about 14% to the sector's emission, and aviation contributes to 11% of the sector's emission. So as much as we're seeing the aviation sector has just, it's the least in terms of its emission, we're seeing it's the fastest growing sources of emission in the transport sector. So if we were to look at 2020, we actually foresee emission of about 12 million tons this year alone. So there's a lot that needs to be done to address this issue. So there's investment and financing opportunities to address this particular challenge. IFC did a report, and they were able to establish that the largest investment potential sector in Africa is actually transport, and the potential is about 499 billion out of a projected 783 billion. This accounts for approximately 63% of the total investment potential in the region. So I'll just skip this and take you to a summary of some of the projects that we can actually focus on to address some of these climate-related issues. So I'll focus on city rail, yeah? I don't know how many of you have realized that there's about 1.5 million Kenyans who actually commute from different parts of Nairobi to actually come into the CBD. So there's a need to actually streamline our transport system to ensure this particular city rail is actually streamlined so we can have a proper system in place. And that will amount to around 150 million Kenya shillings in terms of the demand. And then the long term, in terms of investment, it's there actually. There's a lot of money that to be gained if we actually to streamline this. And we'll reduce congestion here in Kenya. Then there's also smart transportation. That's the bus rapid transit model. We can actually invest in this. One bus can carry roughly around 100 to 160 passengers. So imagine if we were to have this particular system in place, we'll be able to reduce the congestions in our roads and also ensure that we cut down on the emission. So the amount that is needed in the short term is about 1 to 3 billion. No, sorry, it's about, in the long term, it's about $350 million. And then there's the ride sharing, carpooling. Liquid Telecom was actually able to introduce this for their staff, and they were able to reduce the cost of transport to 28%. that is significant. So in terms of even cutting costs, by introducing something like ride sharing, something like even carpooling, that can actually address the emission levels in Kenya and also reduce cost. And then there's also freight matching, which I think in the medium term is between 3 to 5 million Kenya shillings. And then there's also looking at electric vehicle charging. So I'll just rush through it. I don't know if you know this, but Tesla, in terms of their shares, it has actually spiked. The value of Tesla, the car company that actually produces electric cars, it has actually spiked. It has surged considerably. So the value of that particular vehicle is actually being driven by investor demand for green energy. So there's a lot of demand for shifting from fossil fuel-based cars to electric energy fuel. To electric cars, basically, yeah. And to probably put up charging stations in Kenya in the long run would actually cost around 30 to 40 million US dollars, which I believe is a worthy investment into this particular venture, partly because a lot of countries in Europe are actually transitioning from using fossil fuel-based cars like Finland, Denmark, and even France. Within the coming decades, they'll stop using fossil fuel-based cars and they'll be using electric cars. So I believe in Kenya at some point, we'll stop importing fossil-based cars and we'll start focusing on electric. So I think as entrepreneurs, we should actually look towards setting up electric vehicle charging stations just to ensure that we address this shift. Then there's also clean fuels, like productions of biofuels. I think it's very important for us to explore this because, as you well know, oil prices in Kenya fluctuate, yeah? So I believe biofuels will actually be a bit in terms of stability, in terms of pricing, and also affordability will be good. So it will cost around roughly 5 to 10 million if we were to put money into this. And then just looking at the transport sector alone, based on all those things I've mentioned, in the short term, we'll probably need an investment of about 8 million. And in the medium term, that's 5 to 10 years, we need 610 million US dollars. So there are certain constraints to achieving this. So there's a need for political goodwill, yeah? Especially for the large projects such as the City Rail and also the BRT. There's also need for significant large financing that may be a strain on local authorities. So there's a need of even engaging the private sectors like the banks and other private sector players to assist in terms of financing some of these large projects. And there's also uncertainty in terms of regulations, especially in terms of even using certain transports like Uber and other forms of transport, yeah? There's this competition pricing, and also the VAT charges and driver employee benefits has not been introduced. So what are the recommendations? We need to prioritize in key impact projects such as the BRT and the City Rail. So this will probably address some of the issues that I've raised, and then also implement low-hanging fruits such as the development of BRT and carpooling lanes. This can actually be done right now, if you ask me. And then also pass incentive legislation such as tax rebates on importation of electric cars and cars that utilize biofuels, together with related infrastructure such as charging stations. Then lastly, we can also look to issuing a green bond in the transport sector. So this can allow us to raise the capital needed to fund some of these projects that I've mentioned. So maybe if you're in the public sector, you can contact the Green Bond Program and find out how to do this. So with that, I say thank you.